everyone, this is Watercolorish. I'm Paul Pitzker, and this is going to be a shorter video about my very simple watercolor palette. If you're a beginner just starting out, it's great to experiment with lots of different colors and find out what you like, but it can also feel overwhelming. If this sounds like you, I invite you to try a simplified palette like the one I have used for years and which I use to make all the paintings you see here on my channel and on my website, like this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and well, about 200 other paintings just like these. People are often surprised to learn there are only 5 colors that I use on a regular basis, and then 3 others I use only occasionally. That's it, just 5 to 8 little paint dabs on my palette. Why so few? Well, when I first dove into watercolors seriously some years ago, I thought, hey, as an experiment and to save wear and tear on my little walnut-sized brain, I'm just going to keep things very simple and use just the colors you would find in a basic inkjet printer, which, as you know, are cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That was the plan anyway. So, in my original super simple palette, my core colors were Winsor Blue Green Shade, which was my cyan, Quinacridone Magenta, which was my magenta, Winsor Yellow was my yellow, and then Payne's Gray was my sort of black. Like printer ink cartridges, these 4 paints allowed me to mix a wide range of colors, and they remain my core paint colors to this day. Note that those are the Winsor and Newton color names. You can check the pigment codes on a paint tube to see if a different paint name from another manufacturer is really the same pigment. Now, Payne's Gray is not a true black, so I also added Lunar Black by Daniel Smith, but it's gritty and not great for mixing colors, so I mostly just use it for my very dark backgrounds. To those 5, I sometimes also add Winsor Green Yellow Shade, which is useful for brilliant backlit foliage, and Winsor Blue Red Shade for mixing cool violets and deep purples, and very occasionally Cadmium Red Medium, which I've used for certain flowers, and for the reds in this pinball machine watercolor. Now, you may know that some artists like to use what's called a split primary palette, where you have a warm and cool version of each of the traditional primary colors, which allows you to mix more vivid secondary colors by using adjacent primaries. And some of you may have already noticed that with my 3 occasionally added paint colors, I'm basically using a split primary palette, except I have only 1 yellow, which is pretty much in the middle of the warm-cool range for yellow, so it works equally well for mixing oranges and greens. And I've also added gray and black and green, but it's still a pretty simple set. I do like that most of my colors are staining pigments, which are great for making subtle, thin, transparent glazes. I find that very useful for realistic watercolor paintings. And also I can wash over previous work without lifting it off much. And that brings us up to 8 paints total. And although this was an experimental palette for me when I first started, all these years later I'm still using the same 5 to 8 paints on my palette because it's really easy to keep track of how such a limited number of pigments interacts, and thinking about all the possible combinations from such a small set does not overheat my walnut-sized brain. So I hope this has been helpful, perhaps just as something interesting to try. And meanwhile, thanks for watching Watercolorish, and I hope you will subscribe if you're interested in learning a little more about watercolor.